I did my presentation on the Endangered Species Act and how it interacts with private landowners. Our public lands are not enough to effectively support all species. In fact, most are found on private land, with two-thirds depending on them and 10% only occurring on private land. This would result in an overall loss of biodiversity if the needs of private landowners and the Endangered Species Act are not balanced. Biodiversity is crucial to create resilient forest ecosystems and landscapes, and also contributes to ecosystem services, which protect our water supplies, food sources, and land. When an endangered species listed under the ESA exists on private land, it imposes a financial burden on the landowner by restricting the economically viable land use activities. This means landowners who depend on their property's productivity for their livelihood can experience financial and infrastructural constraints and actually dampen their willingness to participate in conservation. Many studies claim that the ESA actually has a negative impact on private land for conserving the species it wishes to protect. This is due to the financial burden an ESA listing can have on the land. Many landowners attempt to sell or develop the land before the official listing actually takes place, and this will further harm the species. Landowners have been known to even go as far as to intentionally destroy endangered species and their habitat on their land to avoid the ESA listing affecting it. These actions cause less biodiversity, which means less resilient ecosystems, less carbon storage, and less benefits from nature. There's a few programs being put forth to try to address these problems on private land conservation. The government has the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is the NRCS, and the EQIP, which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. These provide funding for things such as manufactured wetlands, riparian buffer strips, and tree planting for private landowners. Private organizations such as Pheasants Forever and Trout Unlimited focus on building and maintaining habitat for birds and fish. However, these programs are usually simply cost reimbursement programs, so they do not compete with other land use activities such as agricultural or timber production, and this reduces landowners' willingness to participate in endangered species protection and conservation. So if these private and governmental programs cannot pay landowners enough to participate in conservation, one of the solutions I propose is to focus on an ecosystem services market. Ecosystem services are processes and ecosystems that either directly or indirectly benefit humans. For example, wetlands filter large amounts of water before being returned to an aquifer. Native honeybees pollinate crops such as watermelon, alfalfa, cranberries, and blueberries, and floodplains mitigate flooding damages. Therefore, consumers could pay a fee for conserving the ecosystems which benefit them, such as a data center. Data centers could pay a fee of X amount per gallon of water consumed, which goes towards the preservation and management of the watersheds and wetlands which provide them with the water. In fact, an analysis done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers found that wetland mitigation, which is the restoration of wetlands, provides a value from $5,000 to $70,000 per acre per year. Another solution that directly relates to endangered species protection on private land is to adopt Australia's system for conservation grant funding. This is where landowners actually design their own plan and they submit them to the government for approval and funding. This allows more impactful conservation practices to be implemented because landowners typically know their land better than the government, and they're competing with each other to try to create the most impactful plan. It also allows landowners to request what they believe is appropriate compensation for their project. I think a similar competitive bid system in the United States would let landowners propose better plans based on their knowledge and request the appropriate compensation they need to conserve endangered species on their land. So clearly, the Endangered Species Act cannot succeed without private landowner participation. In the current way it's implemented, it can actually force landowners to sell or develop their land prematurely, causing more harm to the endangered species and the environment. Compensation from NRCS and EQIP needs to reflect the land's true economic value, and ecosystem services markets should be created so that consumers are giving back to the natural processes that support them. And a competitive bidding system would garner better participation from landowners. So there's some of the information and ideas I got through researching how the Endangered Species Act interacts with private landowners. Thanks for watching.